shalom, for all the people you like, but forget the people who annoy and aggravate, irritate, frighten you. It says we're called to create shalom every single place we go. And the New Testament writers talk about Jesus coming as the Prince of Peace. Luke's Gospel, you heard a little piece of this morning. God has raised up a mighty Savior for us in the house of David by the tender mercy, listen to that, the tender mercy of our God. Dawn will break upon us to give light to those who sit in darkness and to guide our feet into the way of peace. Jesus talks about peace over and over and over again. Some of you remember the Sermon on the Mount. And he says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Every time he heals somebody or sends somebody out who's been broken and he's touched and healed them, he says, go in peace, in shalom, in wholeness, in new life, in transformation. Mark's Gospel has a really wonderful quote that probably actually is a Jesus quote. You know, the Bible scholars argue over what he said, what he didn't say. But Jesus says, if you want to be my followers, have salt with one another. That means eat together, which we're very good at doing in the UCC. Eat together and be at peace with one another. And most important of all, Jesus says, if you are going to be my disciple, if you are going to follow me, you must be a child of peace. So if we do absolutely nothing else out of our faith call, we are called to be children of peace. I want you to make a note on that. It's probably going to be on the final exam. We're called to be children of peace. And it's not the way we've sort of softened up, sort of like, claw some chicken. Peace has gotten to be sort of, let's be mellow, don't worry, be happy. Jesus was not talking about that. Jesus is talking about something we go do. We be peace. We make peace. We pursue peace. We create peace. We make peace happen. We don't just sit around and go, oh, cool, I'm peaceful. Are you peaceful? Yeah, I'm peaceful. Are you peaceful, choir? Cool, good job. And one of the things that makes us incredibly odd as Christians is that the way we make peace and pursue peace and go after peace and become peace differs for different people. We do it in different ways. A couple of weeks ago, we had Veterans Sunday. We honored all of our veterans and we honored them as peacemakers. The people went off to countries to bring peace and freedom to countries where that was sadly lacking. We honored them for following something Paul says elsewhere in one of his letters. He says, let the boots you wear, and he's talking about army boots or military boots. He says, let the boots you wear be the gospel of peace. But as people of faith, we work to bring peace in other ways. So we don't always have a special Sunday to honor those folks. We don't have a special Sunday where we honor people who are just as committed to free peace bringing by not going to war, by not lifting weapons, who chose another path to peace. And I didn't know this until I was doing some internet research this week. Our Massachusetts Bay Puritan Pilgrim Congregational ancestors, okay, these are our ancestors in faith, were the first legal body in the United States to pass a law that said if your faith or religious scruples prevented you from bearing arms, you have a legal right to not bear arms. The Congregationalists who started it all. Something else I didn't know until I read this, because I've never read the original draft of the Bill of Rights. Probably most of you have, but not me. In the original draft of the Bill of Rights, who knows what the Second Amendment gives us? The right to bear arms, that's right. that no person religiously scrupulous of bearing arms, that means your faith says bearing arms is not okay, shall be compelled to do so. The first conscientious objector law was codified nationally, and they took it out. It's not in the Bill of Rights. By the time World War I rolled around, people did have a legal right to not bear arms, to be conscientious objectors. And even so, there were thousands of people in this country who were imprisoned, were treated incredibly badly because they chose not to serve in the military. And by World War II, somebody very graciously shared his story with me. We have the current draft law in which COs have two options. One is they can serve in the military in a non-combatant position, or they can serve in the civilian public service corps. And thousands of people opted to bring peace and to serve this country by doing that. And so they did things like building, I don't know how many of you read The Beacon. There was a special Veterans Day issue of The Beacon. And okay, I'm not going to tell you here. The woman who wrote an article in there about her father, who was a conscientious objector, was talking about some of the things that COs did. They built dams in communities that needed water. They worked on dairy farms when there were no dairy workers available. They contoured land for agriculture. They worked the hardest, most dangerous, and difficult jobs in mental hospitals, putting themselves at risk for people. They worked with the branches smoke jumpers, with the Forest Service. They did all sorts of things because of their faith beliefs that being called to be children of peace might look different. Not better than, not worse than, but different from those who chose to serve in the military. And people still make peace in what looks like really, really odd ways. One of my greatest joys in reading about today's current college generation is that we have thousands and thousands of very bright, gifted college students, and they're finishing their degrees, and they could go work for companies and make bajillions of dollars, but they're going to Afghanistan to teach school children in areas that are dangerous where there are no schools for children. And they're using their newfound knowledge to go to countries that are famine and wasted and teach farmers new farming practices and so many more ways of bringing peace. And a whole bunch of middle-aged people, some of us who are in this place, you can decide whether you are a college student middle-aged from to get to our vintage elders. Middle-aged people who have perfectly good careers, lots of esteem, lots of prestige, and they're going, I really feel called by my faith to do something different. And so some of those folks are going to teach in inner city schools because they can't get enough teachers. And some of those people risk their safety flying to other countries to offer free medical care to people. Some of those people get creative and they dream up projects like Habitat for Humanity and much, much more. And then our vintage elders. Those folks who have spent their lives working and contributing to society don't say, I get to retire now, I'm not going to do anything. They do things like going down to the library. Every time I'm in the library, I see adult tutors. And they tutor kids from English as a second language. They do things like going down to the soup kitchen, and they make lunches, and they serve lunches to people. And they ring bells for the Salvation Army. Okay, my personal charge to you is, even if you only put in a quarter, make it an Advent pledge not to pass a bucket without putting something in there. It's so important. And some knit, and some pray, and some do other things. There are hundreds of ways that we can create shalom, that we can make peace in our world, in our community. And if we really take our call seriously, Jesus' call to be children of peace, there are a lot of folks who are going to look at us and go, well, you're odd, and 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 yes, we are. In the middle of a world that is filled with every possible kind of conflict as people of faith, we are called to believe that peace is possible, not impossible, possible. And by doing whatever tiny thing we can personally to help bring peace, God can work with all those tiny pieces and create a world where peace is a reality for everybody. Marcia McPhee, in her Advent suggestion, says, a lot of people of us as people of faith have forgotten that we really are supposed to be odd, that we really are supposed to live differently from everybody else. But she says, we've got to reclaim our call to be odd, because Jesus calls us to be odd. And so I'm going to say something, and I'm going to invite you, if you can do it, legitimately, if not, you're going to know I'm not going to say that, but yes, we're Christians, and yes, we're odd.
Yes, we're Christians, and yes, we're odd.
One more time. Yes,
We're Christians, and yes, we're odd.